Hi everybody, I'm Rick Ufford Chase, the mayor of the city of Newport, Vermont, and this is Newport Notes with Rick, where I try and keep you all up to date on the various things that we're working on as a city council and as the staff of the city. So I've got 4 items that I wanted to cover this afternoon. I don't think it will take very long, just to try and catch you all up and keep you up to date. I wanted to mention first that on Monday night, this last Monday, the 3rd of November, the City Council's meeting was held down at the Gateway Center, which many locals will know is the building that's owned by the City of Newport down in the marina. It's a beautiful building, and for the last several years, the second floor of the building has been rented to Memphremagog Community Maritime for the purpose of creating the Memphremagog Science and Education Center. And so we went down, the council went down to hold a meeting down there in their space, primarily so that we could become familiar with how that project is going and what's going on with it. And it was marvelous. John Aldridge, who's the director of MEMSEC, and Asa Gordon, from the director from MCM, who is serving as the program educator this winter for the Science and Education Center, and the current board chair, Larry Wall, and the just previous board chair, Dave Converse, as well as another board member, Jerry Diamond, were all present and made us quite comfortable in their space. And I just want to say, if you have not been into that space on the second floor of the Gateway to see what MEMSEC is all about, you really ought to take some time and go check it out. It is becoming quite a marvelous little science and education center. Doug Coots, I should have mentioned Doug as well, who's kind of the founder of the Science and Education Center, and was there as well to present to the council the other night. This was really Doug's vision from several years ago, many years ago on Doug's part, actually. And he's been pushing and prodding and encouraging us into this place where we have the vision, the dream of becoming a science and education center akin to the Echo Center in Burlington, kind of a little sister to that project, on our own lake here at Memphremagog. Last year, in the last year or so, they have hosted educational programs for 33 different schools, as far south as down near St. Jay, and certainly as far north as up around Magog. And those programs are remarkable. Some of them take place on the Northern Star. They get the kids out on the water to do science experiments. Some of them take place at Prouty Beach or at the beach in Magog. Some are watershed experiments that take place in the watershed for Lake Memphremagog. And some are right there in the program space that is now rented and used consistently by the Science and Education Center at the Gateway. Anyway, it is a project that is designed to be low barrier and free of charge to locals who want to come and visit. And you can learn more on their website at mcmvt.org. mcmvt.org. That's for Memphremagog Community Maritime Vermont.org. I hope you'll check it out. I can't say enough positive about the work that they're doing. Second thing I want to let you all know about is from the same meeting the other night. The council took action to complete the final 2 loans that will kind of complete our digging out of the cash flow crisis that we have been in, that we've been working toward responding to since last spring. So just to give a quick recap and remind everyone, our first effort was to make sure that we finished the year in the strongest possible position, which we did on June 30th, 2025. And in fact, we also just received a non-disputed audit account. In other words, the auditors looked at our books and said there were no disputes, no concerns that they wanted to raise, other than they did lift up some specific concerns that they think we ought to be paying attention to. But we now have that audit in our hands, and we know exactly what our books looked like in the year, fiscal year 24-25. So when we finished the year, we were immediately in a cash flow crisis. We finished basically at break even, and we had to start spending money that we didn't have right away. So we took a loan back at the end of June with Passumpsic Savings Bank. That loan was for up to $2.825 million on a line of credit in anticipation of tax income. Basically, what's taking place is that we spend money in anticipation of the income we're going to receive the 2 times a year that we collect taxes. And so we did a calculation back in May and June, determined that we thought that that could run as high as $2.825 million, and that's the amount we were given authorization to borrow by the council and arranged for with the Passumpsic Savings Bank. The good news is that to date we've only drawn $1.9 million of that money. And our cash flow is quite positive at the moment. We're doing quite well with cash flow. I'll come back to that theme later on in future conversations, in part because the finance task force that has been working on these issues is coming to the conclusion that the smartest thing for the council to do would be to collect taxes 4 times a year rather than twice a year, so that we are not borrowing money as a city and paying interest on that borrowed money to cover expenses that we could be covering as we go along if we collected taxes a little bit more consistently throughout the year. So stay tuned. We don't have a decision from council about that, but it is clearly the direction that the finance task force is encouraging us to think in. So that was the first of the loans. Then we went, you may remember, in August to the voters, and we asked for permission to carry out 4 more loans. The first of those was permission to borrow an additional $75,000 in addition to the money that we had already been approved to borrow for the new fire truck. I'm pleased to say that that loan was completed and the new fire truck was delivered about 3 weeks ago. It is on the premises and has been out on its first several calls. The total amount of the loan that we ended up needing to take was for $868,000 and change. So that's loan number 1 that we were given permission for in August, on the 12th of August at the special election that we held. The second loan that we asked for approval for was what's called a short-term loan in anticipation of bond income. Here again, the issue was that the permission was given to bond the cost of the new water tower in 2020, I believe it was 2022, March of 2022. However, and then we appropriately took out a line of credit to carry out the construction of the water tower on the assumption that we would eventually go to the Vermont Bond Bank and ask for a low-interest loan over, in the end, I suspect it will be 25 years, that would pay back the cost of building that tower. And we did, in fact, have that line of credit. We used the line of credit along with a lot of grant money to get the water tower constructed. The water tower went online only shortly thereafter it was projected to do so, or that we thought it would go online. And so we then had a line of credit that needed to be paid off, and we could not borrow from the Vermont Bond Bank immediately because there were hoops that have to be jumped through. We had to apply, or we still need to apply to the Vermont Bond Bank and fill out all kinds of paperwork to arrange for that long-term note. The problem was that in the meantime, our line of credit was coming due on October 7th, and we really had no choice. We had to find a way to pay that loan back. So we asked the voters for permission for a short-term note from Passumpsic Savings Bank to borrow the money in anticipation of the bond income that we expect we will receive early in 2026. I suspect it will happen in the April bond pool in 2026. Voters granted us that permission. We were very grateful. 2/3 positive support for that. 2/3 majority voted in favor of that initiative. We took the note. It ended up being for just under $3 million. We were given permission to borrow up to $3 million from the original bond language. In the end, we borrowed $2.827 million. That money came in and was used to pay off the line of credit that we had used to build the construction line of credit we used to build the water tower. And the remainder of that money is sitting waiting for us because we intend to use it to complete the water meter installation project. I've talked about this several times. We've been struggling for years to get the water meters finished and fully installed. as of early summer, we were at 58% of the water users in the city who had water meters, meaning 42% did not. And so our staff has been working really diligently. A couple of our Department of Public Works staff have been doing most of the work on this. They're quite good at it, and they've been installing water meters like crazy. If you have not yet called or contacted the city offices to ask for a water meter to be installed, please do so. We need to finish. I think we've done about 200 since early this summer. So that means there are a remainder of some 600 or so water meters that need to be installed. So the city is paying for those water meters. We're using the remainder of the loan fund for the water tower that we got permission for in 2022 to pay for those water meters. That permission was given in that bond action that was voted on back in 2022. And we're doing it on the cheap with our own staff, and they're moving quickly. So I'm pleased to say that that loan was approved and arranged in October. And as a result, we now have the time to work with the Vermont Bond Bank to try and arrange for the long-term financing to cover that. So just this morning, we reached out to the Vermont Bond Bank to say we now have a complete and clean audit for last year. We've arranged for the short-term loan that we needed in order to bridge to the bond, and we would like to work with them over the next month to arrange the paperwork so that we can be considered for the bond pool in April, or barring that, no later than August of next year. So stay tuned. That one is still in the process. Then there were two more loans you may remember that we had permission to carry out. The first one was a loan to the sewer fund, because at the end of last year, the sewer fund was significantly in debt to the general fund. In other words, at the end of the year, the fiscal year, there was a line on our balance sheet for the sewer fund that said, due to others, said that we owed the general fund $874,000. So in August, we asked for permission to borrow up to $1 million to satisfy that obligation. We didn't know at that point exactly what the final number would be. And in the end, the council signed papers on Monday night, executing all the documents so that we can move ahead with a loan from Passumpsic Bank for $874,000. That would be $126,000 less than we received permission to borrow from the voters. And then finally, there was one more vote that took place in that August election, and that was permission to borrow up to $1.8 million to manage the accumulated deficit in the general fund. In the end, the Finance Task Force recommended to the council, and the council voted unanimously in favor of their recommendation that we should not borrow $1.8 million, but rather $1.3 million, because we were able to clearly identify where that portion of the accumulated deficit came from. And you may remember, I'll just say it in the briefest possible way here, that was from a mistake that was made in budgeting that was compounded year after year and no one caught, starting in 2018, in which we double counted income that we had already counted as income as part of property tax, but it was coming back to us from the state of Vermont, and we counted it a second time as property tax. And therefore, we did not, we counted it as new income coming back in. And as a result, we did not raise taxes enough to cover our actual expenses during those years. So in the end, the council approved a loan from Passumpsic Bank for $1.3 million, $500,000 less than the voters gave us approval for. And so I'm pleased to say that in those two instances together, we have actually indebted the city a total of $626,000 less than we were given permission to do so. And I am confident, based on the projections that we've made, that we will be able to manage our cash flow for the rest of the year. So there you are. That's kind of a who's who of the way that we've dug ourselves out of the various financial crises. Now, of course, the next question is, how do we make sure we don't incur further debt going forward? So we are working now on budgeting for next year. We have simplified the budget tremendously, and we will be working with the department heads to develop each of their department budgets for the fiscal year 26-27 over the next month. And actually, the first of those conversations will take place with the department heads reporting to the council on Monday night, the 17th, at our next council meeting. And the other half of them will report on Monday night, December 1st. And then the council will take action to approve the first draft of the budget, hopefully on December 15th. Then we will circulate copies of that budget online and on our website. And on our big town meeting for information purposes day, the big town hall meeting day we've called for Saturday, January 10th, that will be one of the items on the agenda so that members of the community can come and talk with us about the budget, any concerns they have, any ideas they have, any questions they have about the budget. And then finally, the week of the 12th, the department heads will make any final adjustments necessary based on that meeting. And the final draft of the budget will go to the council on the 26th of January for its approval. Assuming the council then approves it, then that's what the voters will take action to approve on March 3rd. So it's kind of a step-by-step and a little bit convoluted process, but we're doing our level best to make sure there's as much opportunity for the community to engage in the process as possible. The last thing I want to mention this morning or this afternoon is that I've started a tour of the various select boards in the area. My goal is to try and get out as mayor to all of the surrounding towns and villages over the next several months and bring them up to date on the changes that are taking place in Newport, the development plans that we have, the efforts that we're making to try and make Newport a downtown that really works for the entire northern part of the NEK. I've done the first 4 of those visits to the towns of Lowell, Albany, Westfield, and this morning, Barton. And those have gone remarkably well. It's great to meet with those select boards and to have the opportunity to share both what we're doing and also our openness to hearing from the concerns of the towns and villages that surround us. We recognize that whatever we do to build out downtown Newport has to work for our sister communities in the northern part of Orleans County and the broader NEK. So I just wanted you to know that we're out and doing those visits. I think I have 3 or 4 more on my calendar between now and the middle of December. Then we'll take a break, obviously, to get through the end of the year holiday season. And then I'll come back at it in January and February. I hope by the end of February to make a visit to every single select board that will have me. And so far, there's been nothing but graciousness and an open spirit. I've been grateful for that. So thanks to all the folks who have already reached out to set up those meetings. That's it for this week. I do not expect to do a Newport Notes next week, but I will be back after the week of the 17th to make a further update. Thanks very much.